You're here because the mainstream media let you down. Turn down the noise because Blackballed starts now.
Good evening, Canada. I am David Wallace, and I am going to give you the real news. We're not as prepared as we would like to be. James is a little under the weather today. So we might have a few technical snafus. Oh, there he is.
Drunk. He means I'm drunk. Fuck off, David. Go on.
Okay, the magic of live broadcasting. This evening, I would like to start off by educating Canadians about how things really are. Not as they appear, but about the real stories underneath the stories you were fed. Today, the internet is all aflame about stories of Mr. Poilievre colluding with the Indian government, about foreign interference, the same bugaboo that has been foisted on the Canadian public, well, hell, the North American public for the last several years. You see, they give you the bells and whistles and the smoke show in the mainstream media. And the real journalists, they chase these things down until they come to their inevitable conclusion, which is a dead end. CSIS has gotten into the act by confirming these stories, but confirming in such a way as it does absolutely zero good in terms of getting to the bottom of the issue. The real story here isn't how Pierre Poilievre was in collusion with India. It's how Pierre Poilievre stood by with full knowledge while India ensured Patrick Brown was not competitive in the leadership race and indeed was disqualified. It wasn't so much about Pierre winning as Patrick losing. And there's a reason for that. Patrick stepped outside the IDU team framework many years ago, which is why the Canadian public was given the 2018 story of Patrick Brown and his sexual advances and his abuse of power towards staffers. As it turned out, it was a complete bullshit story. Fairy tale. I had my hands in it for money because that's what I did. And everyone else who was on that story were furthering an agenda. The real story was the very future of the Conservative Party of Canada and who and what faction would lead it. On the one side, you had Patrick and some very heavy backers coming out of the Niagara region. You had casino interests, and you had international interests. Patrick was a member in good standing with Mr. Modi till a certain trip that was taken and an ideological chasm developed. Mr. Harper stepped in and filled that void, and his favorite puppet, Pierre Poilievre, I'm sorry, his favorite non-completely compromised puppet. His favorite was Jason Kenney, but, well, enough said. Patrick, after the foreign interference report was released, played the good stand-up conservative, and he towed the party line. Didn't endorse Mr. Poilievre, of course. He just basically said, I'll stay out of it. But that's because they were forming up their ground support to make their final push. Now, people need to understand. They say Stephen Harper's in control of the IDU. He controls all these people. They're all his puppets. Well, they may be affiliated, like mafia families are affiliated. They do not all get along, and they all have their own interests. Doug Ford, Patrick Brown are now teammates. I mean, they were ideologically compatible before Doug took part in the heave-ho. It was strictly business, and Patrick understands that. But boy, oh boy, if he's got some guts, well, I'll rephrase that. If he believes it's politically expedient at this time to cut Pierre's throat, he will do so. And all he has to do is confirm that India was targeting him directly. And why? Which I believe he will in due course. The MSN, they are out, and they are out for blood. I know James and myself have received repeated calls from various journalists who are looking to flesh out stories that myself and James broke on Blackballed, as previously we broke them on Dean Blundell's show. Stephen Marr wrote articles. There's a CBC reporter named Carolyn Dunn, who was in possession of some tape, which is rather interesting. It was recorded in a hotel room in Calgary, Alberta in November of 2021. We had arranged a secret meeting in a hotel, in a conference room, to go over a few little foreign interference nuggets and other things. And I received a most unusual phone call, which Carolyn was more than happy to record. Now, that has never been released. I'm sure there's certain legal issues that CBC is guarded about. Also of note, it was a secret meeting, yet Carolyn was followed to the meeting by an unknown third party, which we did trace down. It's big business, and the threats against journalists will be ramping up. We have entered a very dangerous new era for information transfer. But back to the story within the story. This is what they're allowed to print so as not to upset the Canadian population too much. And when I mean upset, I mean to disgust people to such a level that they demand change. I mean taking to the street, storming buildings and throwing people out of office physically type of change. The convoy was the same way. It starts on as a grassroots movement and is co-opted by politicians such as Doug Ford, Pierre Poilievre, and, well, just about every conservative you can find was at that dog and pony show. And don't think I'm picking on conservatives, because it's all the same. It really is. And we've had this discussion before about the followers of these parties. They are believers, and that's fine, because that's what you're supposed to do, support your party. But the people who lead you, they are morally and ethically flexible. I guess that's the term to use. We had an insurrection, a attempted coup, for all intents and purposes, that took place that day. And I'm not talking about the morons and the trailer people and the idiots with the air horns. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, that's what you want to do. Fill your boots. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the pressure that was brought to bear to bring down a government. Whether you love that government or hate that government, it was an attempt to subvert our charter, our way of life, and remove a government by force, if necessary. It was right there. Now, do I agree with the stance our government at the time took on these issues? No, I don't. I don't agree with any government that took these stances, because I believe that they were self-serving rules for thee, but not for me, as we saw repeatedly with all politicians. Look at Patrick Brown, for instance. Again, was he someone who abused his staff sexually? Did inappropriate things with his young staffers? No, that was bullshit. It was a fairy tale. What is true, such as like when Rebel Media caught him in the hockey arena with his buddies and pals when everyone else was locked down, and then to lie about it, you see, that's a real politician. And that's what they all did. I mean, I was still out there working. I mean, I met people when we were all supposed to be locked down. Hell, we jumped on planes, we met in hotels. Nobody wore a face mask. Nobody gave a shit. But they did care that you did. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's not for me to decide. What I am saying is that your publicly elected officials don't work for you. They stop working for you the moment they're elected. You don't have to believe that. All you need to do is take a look at the geopolitical situation as it's unfolding today. We are, for all intents and purposes, involved in World War III. This is a lull, and you don't realize it because there's not bombs falling in your neighborhood. But there are in plenty of places in this world. And it will come here if things get bad enough. But we're being distracted. We're being distracted by so many different stories. You can't even name them all. And we're off balance. And we're not paying attention to the big things. We're not paying attention to what the major investors and institutions are doing with their money. We're not paying close enough attention to the markets. We're not paying close enough attention to things that are happening with our planet. And a lot of things are happening. Things that are being kept under wraps. I'm talking about ecological issues. I'm talking about long-term survival in our way of life. We have a choice that's coming up, and people think it's a left versus right thing, and it's not. Because essentially, there is no difference in how these parties will steer us. Now, how we get there may be different, but we will end up in the exact desired destination. Okay? And it happens because we have allowed our politicians to get away with the worst abuses simply because they're our team. Oh, a liberal committed this fraud, but you know what? Fuck that, because that conservative over there did worse. Oh, this liberal is the worst thing going. He colludes with A, B, or C, says the conservative, whose campaign was paid for by a foreign government through a slush fund. Now, I'm not singling out anybody in particular because that would get me sued again. What I'm saying is we tolerate these things because we're terrified the other side will win. And that is a one-way recipe to tyranny, whether it's red tyranny or blue tyranny. And we've got tyranny on the menu. Now, a lot of people have spoken about the mechanisms and how Doug Ford will never be prime minister because of this rule or that rule. We're about to be in for some extraordinary circumstances. You need to tighten your belts, so to speak, because we are going to be dragged into an economic depression, not recession. These tariffs that people say that we can circumvent or are wishy-washy or will not lead to complete ruination. Let's be realistic. A trade war is going to be devastating to this country, no matter how you slice it. A trade war, a global trade war, will be economically devastating worldwide. And this is what we really are facing. I know people think that some of my ramblings are crazy, maybe. But what if I'm not? The people that I've sat with who are politicians, who had problems that needed fixing, I'm not worried about them because they're political whores. And like all whores, they give you exactly what you pay for. What I'm worried about are the people and institutions that would hire myself or people like Nathan Jacobson, many others, again, whose names I won't mention. Although soon we will, especially when we're discussing the individual who's been acting as a two-way radio, so we speak, for a foreign nation for many decades. But we'll get into that. That's a game for another night. You can look at this election that's coming up as a decision between two different styles of management. Same parent company. And again, assuming that we will end up in the exact same spot either way. The conservative government is controlled mainly by international interests. Stephen Harper is not the puppet master. He is merely the, how would I describe him? Well, it's kind of like Martin Bormann, you know, the secretary. He pulls it all together, but the actual appointment are the funds, the money people. They're the ones who make this machine go. And they're going to win regardless. Because these funds, these money managers, their partners are your central banks. Mark Carney is held in great esteem by all parties. Mr. Harper, international businessman. He has an impeccable reputation even in Russia. He is, well, he's worked with the crowns, the City of London. He's one of the money men. The true power that controls how things go. He's their rep. If you're looking for sound economic policy, you're not going to find it with either leader, because that's not the point. And it wouldn't matter anyways, because North America, well, we're so badly leveraged with this market that that we're long past the time where any of it makes sense. Is any of you taking a gander at the debt clock? Whew. It's yeah, it's not good. But if you're looking for a more progressive, how would I put this, a more progressive managed society, you should vote liberal. If you are looking for a more buttoned down / repressive authoritarian society, you will vote conservative. Don't get me wrong, if you step too far out of line, you're going to get whacked either way. But this is a decision on what issues are important to you, social issues, because that's the only thing you're going to get from either one. Everything else is same. I can't tell you how to vote. I can't tell you who to vote for. I can tell you that I strongly believe, and my reasoning for believing this is multifaceted. I strongly believe that both Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre are going to absorb tremendous reputational damage during this campaign. You will hear a lot of stories, such as the Indian interference and what's this laughable Brookfield investment from China. Wow. Newsflash, every single major fund or corporation in this world has Chinese dollars in it. They're everywhere. Hell, just think about it. The United States of America is going to go to war with China. Their entire arsenal, their telecommunications, even their power grid, hell, it was all made by China. We will have our skirmishes and our wars in places like Ukraine and Syria and Lebanon and Palestine will continue to be leveled into obscurity because nobody cares. Nobody really. You may care. I may care. But the people who make the decisions in this world don't. Because if they did, do you think after this many generations, children would be murdered from indiscriminate bombing, families, generations of men and women wiped out? Do you think that would continue? No. We live in a lie. Our pharmaceutical companies, let's take Barry Sherman, for example. Apotex was solely responsible for the epidemic of OxyContin in this country. You can blame the doctors, you can blame the communities, but the drug pushers, the ones who turned our doctors into salesmen, that's the problem. And these companies operate without risk. They're indemnified. If your politicians really cared about you, they would clean things up. But they don't. They slogan you to death. They want situations to deteriorate so they can build private prisons and force people into drug treatment programs. Or they might offer you an opportunity to commit suicide. I don't know. But we have an epidemic on our streets. And yet, that's not the number one issue. How can that be? When I am out every day, I see tents. I see people begging for change on the streets. I see people sleeping in their own piss out front of the Rideau Center. When the pricks would walk down from Parliament Hill and step over them so they could go to lunch. Conservatives, liberals, these people are colleagues. They're red light enemies. Meaning when the red light is on, they're on. But we demand what? We don't demand real change because we are caught up in a game of what about Bob? What about this guy? What about that guy? He did this, he did that. They're all no damn good. Think about this. Pierre Poilievre has never worked outside of politics in his adult life. Ever. How could he possibly understand the pressures of the average everyday Canadian? Mark Carney has led a life of privilege and financial success. Did he earn it? Absolutely. Is he in touch with everyday Canadians? No. He can't be. Because he's not one of you. He's not an everyday Canadian. And everyday Canadians cannot hope to aspire to the office of Prime Minister of Canada. Because to get there, you need to have the right people behind you. And that doesn't happen because the everyday average Canadian would want to fix what they see. They wouldn't care. They wouldn't care about offending anybody. They would stick to their beliefs. And that's what we want. That's what we should demand of our politicians. I don't give a shit if I agree with you. I want to know that what you want to do, you believe in. And you believe in it because you think it's the right damn thing for Canadians and your constituents. Not because you have somebody in the back who put $100,000 into your campaign and wants his piece back. Okay? I don't want to be in a situation where I've got to vote for somebody who gave away the entire green belt to mobsters. Now, you can dress it up and say, good men in their community, hardworking people. Look, they're fucking thieves. They're roaches. They're fucking criminals. I don't give a shit how much respectability you paint on them or how many plaques on the hospital wall you put up. These guys are goomba fucking goons, and they're cowards. Because cowards need to be in a family. Okay? You're drug dealers, you're human traffickers, you're fucking pimps, and you are garbage. And anybody who carries the water for those people, fuck you. I ain't got no respect for you. And neither should any Canadian. We see a premier flying around, being escorted by OPP officers, partying with the brass, payoffs through organized buck and does. I mean, it's right in your face. Nobody does anything. And any journalist who does want to write about it, well, they're muzzled because their outlet is owned by the very same people who benefit from the criminals who control these puppets. Doug is making a move. This move has been planned for a long time. I believe that Pierre and quite possibly Mark Carney, if hostilities break out, as I believe they will, I believe that they will both not be prime minister. And I believe that the interference from the United States of America and the oligarchs who are pushing this 51st state bullshit, and let's be honest, this is not this is a grab. Greenland, Canada, this is a grab, and these are the first traces, and this is really going to stick in the craw for MAGA. This is the first traces of these economic fucking hitmen banksters turning us into a North American Union. Because that's the ultimate goal. It's consolidation. And I'm not going to talk about people like Alex Jones who tell you we got alien bloodsuckers and God knows what else. Are there sick people in this world? Absolutely. People who are in that economic stratosphere have strange tastes, whether they're in politics or not. I've seen it. I've worked for people. People like Stronach, people like Nygaard. If you have the raw Klondike papers, you'll see a great deal of communication between Frank Stronach, his people, and me. I knew what they were doing. I cleaned up messes. And it's disgusting. And yeah, what a world. These respected pillars of the community are deviants and monsters who, until they had their cards pulled, so to speak, could get away with just about anything. There are no good choices this election. In terms of MPs, MPPs, there are some choices. There are good choices. There are good people. But in terms of who will lead your party, who will shape your policy, they're not in control. They're not. They are compromised. And by compromised, it's not always because of blackmail material. You have financial direction. We need, as people, as voters, we need to become more engaged in the issues. We need to become more engaged in what is going on around us. And we live in a world that is built around doing everything it can to distract you from doing just that. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say that we're doing great. Canada's just trucking along and everything's fine and dandy. Really? I want you to think about the last 5 years. How many people, excluding politicians and PPE and medical supply companies, exclude them because they all, their wealth exploded. But how many of you out there can truly say that you're in a better economic position than you were 5 years ago? That things are better? There is a silent time bomb in this country. People who know that they're about to lose their homes, that they won't be able to renew their mortgages. People whose grocery bills, transportation bills have skyrocketed. Now you can say the price of eggs or this have come down. I'm talking about in 5 short years. Look at where the prices are on everything. The market. The real estate market is dead. Look at the price of lumber. Look at the inventory. What you're told on mainstream outlets is to keep you placated, to keep you calm. We're in an economic catastrophe. On the campaign trail, you will see a lot of rah rah, cheer cheer, but nobody will ask the real questions. Nobody. Nobody will stand up and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Polyev, I would like to ask you about Austin Caron, a intern who died. I believe he ingested his own vomit, choked to death. There are some questions about yourself and him. Would you please answer them?" No, I don't know what the answers are. I won't say. I don't know. I'm not going to make any accusations, but there's a question there. Mr. Polyev, why has he refused to comment on the question of your parentage, Mr. Gerald Chipor? Now, is that true? I have very strong reason to believe it is. And it's not a Trudeau and Castro's your father. Hell, maybe he is. I don't know. I don't care. You know why? Because Justin Trudeau's not on the ballot. So I don't give a shit. If he was on the ballot, fair question. You want to ask Mr. Polyev, ask Mr. Trudeau. But people think it's just political tit for tat. I'm not fucking around there because there's a very real and present danger to this country if Mr. Polyev is in fact the son of Gerald Chipor. Because if you look at Mr. Gerald Chipor, you will find a very colorful history. And I dare say a very frightening one. In terms of his militancy, religious and political militancy, and how he believes that government should be treated. There are clips that I'm sure James will make available afterwards. But I believe for the national security of this country, that that's a question that should be addressed. Because I do believe that they are father-son.
David?
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Do you think that religion plays a role in what people like Gerald Chipor and others are doing in the background? And if so, how does that conflict with what Polyev is doing?
I believe that I'm hearing myself in your background. I believe that religion does not only play a role, I believe it is the ultimate role in Mr. Chipor's mind, but not religion as it's meant. Religion as a weapon. Mr. Polyev, through his own statements in the past, has already told you how he will govern. He will abolish, as he calls it, the welfare state, which sounds great at a political rally. But what he means is he will cut supports for the most vulnerable members of our society. Seniors who are already probably eating cat food at this point will be unable to manage, which is really terrifying because if we have another pandemic come through, I certainly wouldn't want to see more of our elders murdered in long-term care homes, as Doug Ford ensured would happen during the pandemic. Remember when the fucking army had to clean up the place? That's how disgusting the situation had become. Gerald Chipor's vision is a religious, puritanical, dystopian hellhole. And he has shaped Pierre's political mind more so than Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper took very many directions in his political life through the mentorship of Gerald Chipor. Gerald Chipor, I've said it before, I believe to be the most dangerous man in Canada. He is also instrumental in the relationships that have been forged south of the border with religious Republican organizations, which is why I believe you see Alberta in such a mess right now. The political environment of the last half decade has been shaped by Mr. Poilievre's, excuse me, Mr. Chapor's associations with religious organizations such as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, the Seventh Day Adventists, and every other type of whack job outfit that you can find that believe God's guns and death to gays should be top of the list. We see visceral self-loathing in this conservative party. We see abhorrent things on the horizon. If they do 1/10 of the things to the Canadian public that they had me do to their own fellow conservatives behind closed doors, this country is in for a living hell on earth. Yeah. But don't think a vote for red is going to evade or going to avert economic collapse, because no matter what, we are in rough and tough. And we need to break out all the reasons why I believe that Doug Ford will emerge as the Prime Minister of Canada before the end of this year. Quite possibly before the election is over. And I have very good reason to believe this. And we will lay it out one point at a time. We will have guests on as well. And we're going to strip bare the machine that landed Doug Ford in the office of the Premier of Ontario, and who I believe will ensure he becomes the Prime Minister of this country. Then no, that's not a good thing. Canada needs to be on guard. Play on words, but they need to stand on guard for what's coming. Because it's going to be a lot. And we are going to be hit with things that we've never been hit with in our lifetime: economic, social issues. And they will all happen rapidly. There's a reason this election was called. And it's not just the polls. They need to get it in before the bottom falls out. And fall out it will. I would look for a story from the CBC that I know that you're probably involved in, James, that will come out, which I hope will force Patrick Brown's hand into talking more in depth about his failed, or what should we say, prematurely aborted leadership campaign for the Conservative Party of Canada. I think that's coming.
There are two stories coming from the CBC that I am the source. I don't care that I'm giving myself as the source, but one of them is that the identity of the person that is the foreign affairs. Is the person who was responsible for the Indian Foreign Affairs Office to have a what do you want to call it, a foreign interference card to pull, and there's
the bag man.
Well, that's coming out. I'm way too inebriated at this moment to talk too much about this, but David's going to wrap up in about a minute. But in the next 2 days, just an announcement. You're gonna see a story from CBC Radio Canada or CBC that will explain all the stuff that David's been saying. And for most of the public, it's going to be like, wow, this is crazy. For us here, we're gonna be saying, "Oh, wow, we recorded this like 3 years ago." So, David, you're gonna wrap up. I just came in to say hi.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here we are.
No problem. James has had a trying few weeks, but he is getting things back together and getting back stronger than ever. Tonight we had a few other things planned. It wasn't possible,
Oh, hold on.
but we will be able to put up some stuff.
I don't know what that means. I'm a little like I'm under the gun right now.
I mean, you've been busy. You've been quite busy.
It doesn't matter. This shit doesn't matter. Like my viewers know who I am. But yeah, go ahead, David.
So we will, on the next show, we will have our slides and be able to dig into the meat of the rise of Doug Ford and hopefully how to stop him and Mr. Polyev by extension. Look, we need to be out there. We need to be out there to ask these questions. If the Ezra Levants can do it, we need to be there. We need to be the ones sticking cameras and microphones in these guys' faces. If you want to support the show, if you want to give us the ability to go to these whistle stops and provide a little bit of counterbalance during this campaign, if you want us to be able to put together a good production, there are links on my webpage. And if you got your time and your talent, if you know how to put together websites and all kinds of other things, and hey, we need you. There's not much at stake here, just our way of life in Canada. So I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we will be back this week. And until then, tally ho.
Blackmore, 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 Black.